What's up, folks? Casual Dad here for what is probably the single most difficult PvP campaign we are ever going to see. And a couple reasons I'm saying that, right? So, number one, it is slightly higher deck points, so we'll look at the modifier. So, we're looking at 275, almost 300, full bodyguards, and then the level caps are everything's even playing field, but they're somewhat low. So, especially legendaries are very low level. And so the way that works out, and we're actually going to look at a couple of the actual cards. The way that works out is your legendaries have trait level 1 of their secondary trait, so 3-1. Epics only have trait level 3 of their base trait, and then normals and commons and rares have trait level 3. So, but the thing is, so aside from trait level, a couple levels above that are high, heavy hit point levels. So you're going to notice that a lot of your cards have lower hit points than you're probably used to playing. And with the larger decks plus lower hit points, it's actually very, very challenging. And then lastly, of course, the elephant in the room, Magus. The super heavy warlord Magus is still in the game. So a really powerful warlord who I have not beaten yet. My one saving grace on this is that every time I've played against a Magus Warlord, they have surrendered because they felt so bad. So there is that. But chances are this recording is not going to make it to folks by the end of the campaign because it's wrapping up pretty closely here and it's been just a wild week. So I wasn't able to get ahead of it. But I'll do a couple games. We'll see how this goes. And I'm probably going to talk a lot because I'm used to playing the game now with the fast speed modifier and going back from that to normal speed games, and especially sync PvP is a little slower. It has made me realize just how much faster games play with the fast modifier. So we'll see how many I actually get through. Up against Glogothrox, which is a pretty wild choice. Glogothrox may actually be a really, really strong choice in this modifier because his ability can shut down a Magus deck better than most because they don't have anything to give them additional attack value over their base attack value. Because the last campaign we had with the Magus where it was live, I think the last 2 PvP events were cut off the head. So you could counterplay against the Magus by killing his high power cards and then having your surviving cards hit much harder back. Not going to be the case on this one. I do think that one of the things that really saved me in that last one was that cut off the head. But then noticing the lower hit points on a lot of cards here, so like that's pretty low. I think mine is over 200, the one that I usually play. Wild. And the strength one is just not particularly scary. So I've tried a bunch of warlords. I tried the Parasite, who I still really enjoy. I've tried Artemis, who is good, but Artemis really, really suffers not having that secondary trait. So not having that dead shot takes away a lot of his competitive advantage because he's not able to single out tougher warlords. He doesn't have an answer to that. Yeah, let's do this. And so Parasite, Artemis, I tried Eldrad and was matched against a Magus deck, a really, really horrifying Magus deck that was all of the AoE Psychers, which the AoE Psychers are completely bananas in that deck. Like doing that minimum 75% damage also applies to the area effect attack from Psionic Blast, which means that I was taking insane damage across my entire board, even through fear, even through shields. It was crazy. So that Magus' ability applies straight through shields and through fear is incredibly powerful, and that there's no consideration for what kind of attack it is. So it does apply to Barrage is bad, that it applies to Psionic Blast is bad, that it applies to both is really bad. And especially at the high deck point modes, it's very easy to build a deck around Magus with something that will be very difficult to beat. I love this too. I love to see this. Chris, shout out to you, because not only is it Glogothrox, but so far it is all Nurgle Glogothrox, that is a gentleman's deck. Not sure how else to put that, because there's got to be another word for that than gentleman's, but it is, it's a gentlemanly deck. So I'm trying Azrael, who I like the even deck mode for that because I like the even playing field for that because it gives my Azrael a big boost in level. And he's one of the ones that, without cut off the head, you have a distinct advantage because you are boosting your own attacks. Your cards get stronger throughout the game. And since your opponents usually don't, that's a nice, pretty big edge. I have played against a couple Helbrechts, and the Helbrechts are good. I think one of my only wins, though, was against Helbrecht as Artemis. And it was a really challenging match, but still worked out. And I will say one of the key things about the Magus being in this is it does eliminate the threat of your shield-heavy Captain Akrans. So I'm not seeing any of those. We're going to go ahead and pop in a cough drop here. Hope you'll excuse me. Bit under the weather this weekend. And I wanted to make sure to cover this because I've been doing a lot of X-Wing content. I'm actually going to be out of town next week for an X-Wing content, so I'm going to be a little bit lighter on content. I'm trying to get some posts scheduled out ahead, but a lot of the Warhammer combat card stuff is very timely. So I wanted to make sure to get this out here while I could. I am also hoping to make sure that I get the effective laddering with the other factions the second after that video I put out a couple weeks back at the end of last season. I'm hoping to get that out in the next day or so you can have that going into the weekend. And hopefully do all that without putting out too much content. Okay, this is a slow game. So with this pace of this game, I probably will play 2, maybe. That's just kind of feeling this out right now. But we'll see. Azrael's gnarly. I really like his ability. And the limitation for me has always been Azrael himself. Mine, again, is I think level 3. So going up a couple levels, and when your opponent is that fixed level, is really helpful for Azrael. And again, he has a big edge here without there being any modifiers. He is increasing his card attack values, and the opponent's not. Which I was not playing Azrael against that Helbrecht deck. But am now, of course. Now the downside, though, of course, is I picked Glogothrox, which is actually probably the worst possible matchup for an Azrael deck. But I do still have a pretty decent edge here. So he's going to be down to just his Warlord, and I've got an injured card on the board, and 2 very powerful hitters that are not close to dead yet. I think I have 1 more Dreadnought in this deck. Ooh, very nice. And yeah, even Typhus. Like Typhus... So this level cap is extremely challenging just because cards are, on the whole, somewhat weak. That's kind of what I was getting at when I did a big ramble about the different stats and such. But the biggest thing is that they are not anywhere near as powerful as they will be, even kind of just like 1 or 2 levels ahead of where they are here. So all of your cards are very fragile, and it removes most of the strongest counters the cards and Warlords have against each other. So it's the most even playing field I've ever seen at a PvP event, with some of the toughest Warlords with restrictions on the best counters to the toughest Warlords. So Artemis should be a really strong counter to the Magus, but because Artemis's cards all have low hit points, there's no cut off the head, and then Artemis himself doesn't have Deadshot. It's really challenging to get through that, and one of the few things that could deal with a Magus is just not there. I have seen Rakarth decks that were doing pretty well, and that's a decent one against Magus as well, because you can feed weaker cards and then your tougher cards can tank through their more powerful pieces. But you need cards in there that do a lot of damage, which can be a little bit challenging. Oh man. Honorable joust, as they say. And we'll see if he goes melee again. He did that on purpose to lose. I've got Bjorn back to base stats. But the goal of this deck was to put a couple cards in that have very high attack values across the board, and then also include the utility pieces of Medicae and Taunt to keep them on the board. And then I also have the... Very nice, very nice. Shout out to Chris, everyone. That is a really good sport. And I did hear some members of my clan talking that once you finish the rewards track, you can still keep playing the PvP just to try some stuff out. Especially with this PvP event being as challenging as it is, if you have the time to keep playing, why not? Yeah, and so you still get some rewards for it, and it's a really nice way to, again, try stuff out and just play a bit more, but then also, it's really helpful for players still hoping to complete the rewards track. So you can play goofy, weird stuff, and still be a good sport. So, really appreciate that, Chris. Good to see that. So here's the full deck. So I've got these 3 Dreadnoughts are all really strong pieces in Azrael decks just because they have a ton of durability. These 2 have regen. This one has perfectly even stats from range to melee. Of course, got my target acquired and my two taunts and Medicae. I was playing a lot of decks where my biggest goal was not to trigger Big Game Hunter, so everything was under 40 points, and I just had trouble literally punching through. Durability wasn't there even without worrying about Big Game Hunter, and I didn't have the utility. So, because this particular PvP event is so challenging, I do think one of the key pieces is that you absolutely have to have those taunt, Medicae, target acquired utility pieces in there. Um, I suppose why not? All right. Sets the tone. Seem a little more serious with that profile image, though. Okay. And this is our dear Wartsnaga. So I gotta be careful about what I'm hitting here. If I recall correctly, Wartsnaga got a buff recently, but I don't remember exactly what it was. Also got a bit of a nerf, though, in one of the key cards, changing from Endless to Taunt. So Smirk It is Taunt now, which makes sense for the card, but is a bit of a bummer, because I always ran Wartsnaga with 3 Endless cards that are sub 8 points to make sure that I was giving myself the best possible chance to get the bonus. Oh dear, it started already. And not quite running a full deck. It's pretty challenging to run a deck that's not full with these modifiers, not using the full 8 bodyguard slots. You gotta really try. My first initial successes was with a mask deck. I really enjoyed that, whereas a melee ranged mask, and that was really effective. I did alright. Still did not get anywhere near passing through the rewards track, though. And then after that, I did try a Mozrog, just because of the very high... just because the low HP across the board, I figured that I would be able to tank things, and that was when I ran up against some really nasty decks that took me down to size. And then, of course, I tried Artemis. That was win some, lose some. Artemis is one of the stronger warlords, but these modifiers hit him particularly hard. Artemis is particularly powerful at high level, when you out-level things a little bit, or equal level, but up there. So you need those secondary traits really badly. You need that multiple shields. You need that multi-level fear. You need those double traits where you have fear and shields. All of those things really impact Artemis. And this is working really, really well. It's somewhat designed in, but it was also somewhat unintentional that my off-turn attacks have been lining up with the buff or debuff on my taunt card. So these guys were doing ranged. Next I'll do melee to get the full bonus, and my taunt card here has melee ready. Perfect. And then last time I believe my Medicae had ranged ready. No, that doesn't make sense. Somehow I ended up with a ranged ready. Because I did a melee attack. Not that complicated. Okay. Okay. Yeah, so Rakarth, this is the first Wartsnaga I've seen. I love to see that. That was the first Glogothorax I've seen before, the last one. Have seen a little Greyfax, so Greyfax is still kicking around. And the Psychic Greyfax is very scary, but not as scary as it could be because of that dial down on secondary traits. But the all Psychic Greyfax is still quite something with these modifiers. Ooh, I'm gonna regret that. But losing the Medicae was in part of tactic. Let's see. In part of tactic that may or may not pay off to kind of clear some things here. Oof, man. Good chance he's going to put something over here and leave this guy here to take out Bjorn. Bjorn's Inspiring Presence, I will be missed very badly. But if it ends up being Wartsnaga versus... Oh, okay. If it ends up being Wartsnaga versus Azrael, I feel pretty good about that matchup. What you gonna do? I would not have switched these. I would have gone ahead and left those as is and gone ahead and go melee. Killed Bjorn. Oh, he still killed Bjorn. Okay. So it was a smart play. I probably want to play this sooner than later. Let's see. Okay, so I should be able to kill that, and it's... possibly a mistake. We'll go ahead and ready, which will give me the attack buffs. It's going to be just Azrael up against at least 2 of these guys. That's a bummer. Azrael and the regen Dreadnought. This is going to be close. I think he's probably got me. I think I made a couple poor moves in the middle there. Ah, man, that was a bit of a waste. Okay, who hits harder for 141? Can I kill that? Probably. With the melee buff I'm about to get. Can I kill that and then survive in the following turn? It's a bigger question. Dun dun dun. Probably not. So here's where I've really been hitting. My endgame attacks are just not there. So as much as I like Azrael, I really don't think I'm going to have enough here to do it. Well, okay, so with the buff, with the ready, with the anti-infantry, maybe. I'd better, because no, it's not going to be enough. No, okay. Womp womp. Good game. But yeah, so like I was saying, it is extremely even playing field. This is a really hard PvP event, which I enjoy. I hope a lot of players played this, because most of the time we've done PvP events, there have been things to kind of soften the blow and like the cut off the head modifier. There's a lot of information in there that is unhelpful. Like if the designers of the game are actually trying to get a meta-analysis of where everything stands competitively, a lot of what they've done before is just not helpful, whereas this should do a very dramatic, like a really good job of getting an actual sense of where the meta is. So I have always believed that Morvenn Vahl is probably the most powerful warlord in the game, or way up there, aside from the Magus. And that is really challenging too, because my expectations are challenged there because... Excuse me, I'm so sorry. Because of the modifiers here. So because this is more deck points, because the level is capped, she may not be quite as good as I usually think of her being. Let's see, so I'm taking kind of a mix of ranged and melee cards that are really efficient. I will want some shields. Okay, has shields and furious. No, I don't want some shields because Vahl. So I've got some psychic, I've got a little melee. I need to dip into ranged a bit more. Ooh, yeah. And Vahl really likes regen. Regen and Berserk are both definitely things that she is great with. 49, eh? Hicks is one of the best cards in the game. You'll go ahead and do there. And why is Vahl so good? So her traits by themselves, she has great attack values, a ton of hit points, she has fear, and her secondary trait, I believe, is Inspiring Presence, if I remember correctly. But she's very good at amplifying the defensive abilities of her cards, which...
What is happening? Okay, then. I guess to check on mine.
And we're back. I had a lovely conversation with my wife. We did have some very, very bad storms here, and we do have one very old, very cantankerous outdoor cat that we're a little bit worried about. He's okay. He's got a great spot under the shed he likes to hide in, especially when the weather's bad. And he goes in there hours before storms hit, and then we don't see him for a couple days, which is always a little worrisome, but hopefully he is okay. Yeah, he's been really fine, and we did not have the tornadoes, thank goodness, so we're okay on that, so we're back in the game. Ooh. Make it a timeout here, and I may have to try again. But yeah, so Vahl is incredibly good on defense. Her own personal stats are phenomenal. So she's really, really good at supercharging regen, fear, berserk. And so anything you could do with very durable cards that have decent damage that could use an extra bump up, their durability can just go off the wall. So you saw if the Inquisitor Karamazov, whatever he is in there, he's a really, really... oh, the timeout. Okay, we'll try one more. One more game. This is getting long. I don't want to get too long, so we'll get there. Bummer to have a timeout. Oh, look, I get Captain Carluto on a win. Yay! I am going to play this out. I'm not going to record the whole thing because it's just going to be really long. The games take forever, and they are slow. Which is one of the reasons I haven't been playing Vol, is because she is quite slow herself. And because she emphasizes durability, she makes games go even slower. But very strong Warlord. And this, again, is kind of putting my money where my mouth is. I've always considered her on an even playing field at the point where you do have some traits where, like, she is at trait rank 3, where she has fear rank 3. I do think pound for pound she's one of the best warlords in the game, if not the best warlord in the game. Not as good as the Magus, maybe not as good as Lilith Hesperax, but extremely strong. So she's the one I should try. And see, in this playing field, with everything's even, where it's a very, very competitive event, with a lot of very powerful decks out there against humans, this is definitely the time to test that theory. Against another Wartsnagga. Ugh. Might even be the same one. I didn't see the name on the last one, but I don't think so. I gotta say, I'm surprised to see Wartsnagga. I know he's good, but 2 Wartsnaggas by different players is very surprising in this matchup. I will say I'm really, really excited to see the results of this. So I mentioned I'm excited that players are playing this. I hope a lot of players are playing this. Yeah. Yeah, I hope a lot of players are playing this event, so that when we get in the Discord, we usually get a nice little breakdown of the results, like win rate by Warlord. Usually we only get a couple, maybe the top 10. Sometimes we get the top 5 and the bottom. No, we may have gotten top 5, bottom 5. I don't remember for sure. I think possibly. It's been a minute. But yeah, and so if we have a really even playing field, that's going to make it that much easier to actually see what the actual results are, instead of kind of guessing based on the modifiers and everything. Ooh, lightning. Yeah, this is going to be my only video tonight. May or may not even get it posted tonight, although I hope we do. But I'm very excited to talk about the PvP results as we get them out. Just going to go for this. And so Vol, just to recap it, she gets a shield. For the first 3 times a friendly card takes a hit, it reduces that incoming damage by 30%. Which doesn't sound like that much, but once you start taking that and realize that your cards are still alive after all the hits they've taken, you really feel that difference. Especially, again, for the cards where that stacks. So like Fear, Regen, and Berserk. Berserk cards tend to die before they get a ton of benefit out of that Berserk stat, but with Vol, they really go off the chain. And then Fear, those cards are just like stupidly tanky. And then on top of that, Regen, they just end up topping off as they're taking less damage. But the last category, Taunt, is completely ridiculous. If you have a Taunt card in a Vol deck, they both stack. So each time it takes a hit, if it has Taunt up and it has Vol up, you're looking at like a 70% damage reduction. Which, like I said, completely bananas. Okay, can I kill that? Can it kill me? Can kill me. In melee. Do I have a melee debuff? I do not, so we'll just go for it. So none of my cards died, so I'm still trading up, and these are not my most durable cards, although they are some of my cards I'd prefer not to lose. So shields are still good, but not as good as they are in some of the other campaigns where we see true max level or we see slightly higher level. Primary trait of shields is, of course, better. Because they get 3 shields. Whereas if it's a legendary card with shields, they get 2. Or excuse me, they get 1. Okay, we'll go ahead and debuff that range, do a little dent in this thing, and then see if I can really make a difference in it. I really like Harker. He's one of my favorite cards in the game, and he sucks. He's really bad. But his points cost for his attack stats is good, but he's just not durable. Like, he dies well before he actually does anything, so he's not great for his cost, except in a Vol deck, especially if you have extra deck points. He's a terrific piece to slot in there because his melee and ranged are both good. And he gets more powerful, but then also because he has that defensive buff, he sticks on the board long enough to actually make a difference and trade above his cost instead of well below his cost. We'll see if I survive that. I think so, yeah. Ooh, close. That hurt. There we go. So we got a fear card. We're going to see how stupid a fear card is with this modifier. So 45 going in, he takes 32. But the 45 was the fear impacted, so the 32 is the additional damage reduction after Vol's defense, after fear. So this thing has gone from doing a lot of damage, and this is, of course, in a buffed up Goldak or Wartsnaga deck. If he was not in a Wartsnaga deck, he would be hitting like barely doing any damage. Go ahead and do this. I may regret that. Now let's see. Does he do enough melee to kill that? Probably not, but maybe he does. Look at that. All right, cool. Let's go ahead and put a dent in Wartsnaga himself before Vol hits the board. But yeah, so I'm going to play Vol a bit more just to kind of get a feel for it. She is very, very slow, so I'm not going to finish recording that or finish the entire thing. But I wanted to go ahead and give her a try during this event because there is no better time to try it. I'm sure I've said that multiple times, but because these games are so very slow. Especially, like, I had not realized fully how dramatic the impact of the faster game time was on my play. Like, I play more games now, but at like a quarter of the amount of play time, which is kind of great. And I definitely missed that in PvP. Though I get it. If it's synced, players need time to make their moves, and this is a rough final board. Okay. Yeah, so his damage is not great because he's got fear, but ooh, ouch. The good news is I'm going to hit Wartsnaga real hard, and then Vol herself will have fear and the damage reduction, but that is a lot of fire. And Barrage is really good against Vol. It's good against everything, but it's particularly good against Vol because she will have the... Okay. Oh man, what do I do here? And then ranged, he's probably going to kill most of my cards in ranged. I don't think he's going to kill Trajan, and Trajan, well, that may have been a mistake. I probably should have hit him as hard as I could so that Vol herself would have a slightly easier time. Yeah, his range is not good at that level. His range is never great, but it's especially bad at this level. I think he was trying to do the math on whether or not he could take me out or whether or not... Ah, he got me all. Okay, that's a real bummer. I think Vol can still tank this between fear, between her damage reduction, but that's a lot of fire. She doesn't have enough to kill him, so I have to bet on it. Okay, we'll see. That's a nasty Wartsnaga deck. Turns out high deck points are really good for him, too. Interesting. Was he not able to finish me either? It doesn't think he can. Man, okay. I kind of have to wait it out. And I don't have the range debuff, so he's going to build up enough attack to get me. I think on this turn he guarantees he can get it, but he had to be cautious. So he didn't hit me in range. I think last turn he probably had enough, but you don't know for sure. But now he's building up enough where he can be absolutely sure. Or just waiting for me to surrender, I don't know. One of us is going to have to end this game of chicken in a minute. I am definitely not getting the melee buff I need to finish him off, and he's got plenty of range buff. Yep, there. Oh yeah, that did it. Ooh, brutal. Okay. Alright, so I'll go ahead and end the recording there, but hopefully you're trying out the event. Yeah, and good luck. Enjoy the games.